Hello and welcome everyone to Footy Classified, and what a big week it has been in football. Plenty of controversy around the traps, but right off the top we just want to concentrate on the end of the coaching regime of Simon Goodwin at the Melbourne Football Club, the only living premiership coach of the Melbourne Football Club, unbelievably. And today his tenure finished. As we say in football, boys, you pick when you come in, but you don't often get to pick when you go out. The man who broke the story this morning is Tom Morris. And Tom, welcome to you. Take us through the day itself, because it was quite incredible what happened.
Yeah, so the senior leaders at Melbourne were notified this morning there'd be an emergency Zoom meeting, which Alan Richardson would chair. In that meeting, which lasted sort of 15 to 20 minutes, they were told that Simon Goodwin's tenure was up at Melbourne, that he wouldn't be coaching this weekend and being replaced by Troy Chaplin. From then, there was a media conference called, Eddie, for 1 p.m. at the MCG, where Brad Green would sit alongside Simon Goodwin. Now, Brad Green, remember, the night before had driven to Simon Goodwin's house and notified him that he was essentially sacked, that the board had unanimously reached that decision. Every single player was in the room. Interestingly, Paul Guerin, the incoming CEO, was next to Alan Richardson for much of the media conference, and Max Gawn, of course, Jake Lever were there as well. Eddie, Hurdy and Sloaney, I've never seen a coach be sacked with such widespread player support, but the feeling is today, and it has been for a while, that this club just needs a fresh start, and that's exactly what Brad Green said.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's disappointing for Simon, and congratulations first to Simon on an outstanding coaching career. Having coached with him at Essendon for 3 or 4 years, outstanding coach, man management, exceptional. Technical ability was...
Outstanding today as well.
Yeah, technical ability was great, and his work ethic was second to none. And I'm disappointed for him. I think he got a rough ride there to get the sack, but to watch the players and the way they rallied around him shows that he still had the players. But it seemed to me that there's some people aligned with him, or he thought were with him, particularly around the football club, and that turned up at his house, that maybe he was a bit blindsided.
Let's get to what he had to say at the press conference today.
But I'm disappointed because I think we're a hell of a lot closer to turning our club and team back into a contender again than what people think. And I'm disappointed that I'm not able to work with this great bunch of players that I know that we've developed and spent a lot of time developing over time. And I'm disappointed I'm not going to be a part of that. I'm going to miss the people, first and foremost, and probably what I won't miss is probably driving down to Casey.
Which highlights exactly a major problem. I know it was a good gag at the end there, but until Melbourne find a permanent home, they are just a bunch of gypsies, and they have... It's incredible. So Paul Guerin's first job is to not only hire a new coach, but to get this deal done somewhere.
We talk about Simon's tenure as coach, particularly the last couple of years. Interim president, no CEO, and particularly just no home. It fascinates me. I can't believe they still haven't found a home. And for the coach to win a premiership through the COVID years...
He conceded that was an obstacle.
Yeah, but to do what he's done is a remarkable effort.
Let's just to our producers, whack up the timeline now, just off the back of what Hurdy was saying. We've got a timeline we're on a roll here, just to take you through what he had to go through at various stages, and we'll find that in a second.
Pretty tumultuous.
There it is. Have a look at this. So this is back in 21. You had the president at war with the former president. You're going through there. You've got Clayton Oliver going to hospital. You had all the drugs issues that were around the club. You had Angus Brayshaw, one of their leaders, gone. They lost Alex Neil-Bullen. You had Petrarca's injury last year. You had Jack Viney getting a 4-year deal. You had the premiership president, Kate Roffey, gone. You had Gary Pert, gone in tumultuous circumstances. You had Joel Smith, rubbed out for 4 years on a drug case. Recently, you had Jake Lever. I don't think that was much of a big deal. But, of course, the one that knocked him off was, let there be no mistaking, I think his cards were marked when they lost the first 5 this year, when they lost to Essendon, when they lost to North Melbourne, and then they lost the unlosable game against St Kilda. And we just might roll the vision just at the end of that game. And I think this is the bit that... I know what it's like when you're sitting there with fellow directors and your phone explodes, when every Melbourne supporter's watching this going, what in God's name is happening? How does St Kilda work out how to win this game? How could we lose it from here? But not only were we, 54 points up, but we completely botched everything up. Our senior players were running around literally like headless chooks, and then this happened. That is the straw that broke the camel's back, because Tom, they can say whatever they like. They didn't sack him this morning. They didn't sack him last night. His cards were marked last week, and they had to get things done. And I reckon Stephen Smith, the incoming president, wanted it off the books before he arrived back to take over the job.
Yeah, and probably Paul Guerin as well, Sloaney. So this 83-point win on the weekend against West Coast meant nothing. And they essentially said that. The reality with Simon Goodwin is, and you're not the only one to say this, Eddie, many people said it last week, Mick Gleeson wrote in The Age, He was a dead man walking at the end of the season. The fact it came today was a bit of a surprise, but the last 2 or 3 weeks have really meant that he's
But
played
why
as a
was he
stand.
blindsided as much as he was? I mean, he looked generally blindsided.
Well, what do you do? Do you give him a warning it's coming?
No, I think you get a feel. I do think he was generally surprised. I think it was,
Yeah. He was disappointed, he said.
Sloan, that game there, is that the player's fault or his fault?
No, and so that last quarter, probably the first half, you can change some things as coaches, but that last 5 minutes, you can't change anything as coach. You're looking at that going, this is up to my captain, this is up to my leaders to get this sorted, and when you're not in control, it makes it pretty tough.
And you know Simon very well, obviously. You found him a fantastic player.
Yeah, and this is why it's probably a surprise to players too, because Goody, he went to work on absolutely everything that players always gave him feedback
so this
for.
is them this afternoon. They were meant to have training at midday. They went to Kevin Bartlett Reserve in Richmond and they played soccer. Trent Neese from Channel 9 and the cameras caught them down there just having a kick at the soccer ball. I guess to raise morale and because they couldn't train properly at midday. They will train tomorrow to Ed Langdon's 200 this weekend, so they'll celebrate that. They needed a circuit breaker, this club. In the end, it often comes down to the coach to create that circuit breaker.
So many cruel jokes you could do there. We're not going to do it.
That's the old Richmond Soccer Club, that ground there.
It is right next to Kevin Bartlett Reserve.
Yes, how did they... get a great place down there, Kevin Bartlett Reserve.
As they used to say, the great Sergio Paradise once said that, they only mow one side of Kevin Bartlett Reserve and then rake the grass over there.
I can't laugh at that, Ed.
No, you can't, Tom. Back to Turkey for you.
You've got your own...
What's next, Ed? What have we got?
Let's have a look at Simon Goodwin's CV as a person, because Simon was our guest here only a few weeks ago, and we all think he's a ripper. He's probably going to move to Sydney, where his partner is these days, working and
in a big fund up there, Christine, his partner up there, doing a great job there.
I would suggest that unless the AFL are mad, they need to get him involved if he's not already picked up by Sydney Swans or by GWS.
The Sydney Swans have 2 vacancies there. They've got vacancies they want to fill, and Simon Goodwin would be perfect for that if he wanted that gig.
Goody's going to want to take a little holiday because he values that too. But I just want to pump Goody up too, because he was given a lot of feedback over the years from players, and this is why I think the players love him so much. They always gave him feedback. You need to develop your connection. This is before they won the grand final. He went and saw a guy called Mark Visser, big wave surfer, really great in this area. Goody went to work on himself and then came back as a much better coach, had success. And across a 4-year period too, where they competed hard in finals and finished in the top 4 too. So
but he won a premiership for Melbourne.
Yeah, won a premiership for
He
Melbourne.
won a premiership for Melbourne in the second year of COVID in spectacular fashion.
He should definitely be celebrated. I want to ask you, Ed, when a coach gets sacked, and you've had to do it, I think Tony Shaw, what are the machinations behind the scenes? I mean, how long, we're all talking it didn't happen last week, down the week. No. How long before would the Melbourne board have been discussing this, or this would be an idea? Is it at the start of the year, mid-year, or 3 or 4 weeks ago? I think it is as things unfold. Right. So when they were 0-5, and and other issues, and then everyone, don't forget, there's new board members coming in. They've brought in Stephen Smith, they've brought in Paul Guerin. They're looking from the outside in, saying, well, what's going on? We've got all these, what's going on with Clary? What's going on with Stephen May? What's happening here? What happened with Joel Smith? How did this get to this? How did we go from winning the most amazing premiership to being all over the place? And as you said, as we said earlier on, don't forget the Glenn Bartlett situation, the Gary Pert, the Kate Rothy, all that.
There's a lot that worked against him, wasn't there?
Against it, but you can't work in a situation like that. To have any chance of its success, you've got to have the president, the CEO, the football director, and the coach at least in some sort of semblance of order. I mean, it's not always smooth sailing, but geez.
But the next question is, though, to you as the president. Did you have, when you moved on Tony Shaw, I know it was really hard for you, did you have an idea of who you wanted? Or did you go blind, we're going to get rid of Tony and we'd have no idea? Because this board, do they have an idea of who they want, do you think?
Well, the thing with Tony was we had open dialogue, and then he planned out the year. Tony is, to me, is the greatest, if not the greatest Collingwood person, he's the equal greatest. There's no one's been better at Collingwood than Tony Shaw, and he was prepared to do anything. And he realised that the whole club was moribund at that stage, so we needed a whole change-up, and he was going to be part of that. But then he gave himself for the entire last part of the season and helped the changeover. So,
but what about this situation?
But to answer your question, to me, I thought at that stage where Collingwood was, there were only 3 people who could coach the club: Sheeds, Dennis Pagan, Mick Malthouse. Sheeds was just about to win a premiership. Dennis Pagan had just won a premiership, and Mick had just got to a stage where he needed to come back to Melbourne, and I was able to identify him. I love what Mick Malthouse was, and we built the club around him. And interesting enough, as Melbourne go into the next phase, the appointment of Mick Malthouse was the single most important thing that happened to the Collingwood Football Club, and that decision to get him and give him his head is why Collingwood is where it is.
So do they have their man now, do you think?
Well, they haven't signed anyone up. I do know that they are going to look at the big four, and we'll get to those in a moment, but they are going to speak to you as the fifth. So can I just ask you straight up, have you got any interest in getting back into footy? Let me premise it by saying this. I also understand that they're looking to get two big names to come into the club. Now, whether it's one of the big four in a executive role of coaching and they go for one of the previous untried coaches, that could be a situation. Would any of those scenarios suit you?
No, I think I've said previously, and I've been flattered that someone would think about it, but no, that's not something I would.
You know who I'd go for?
Who's that?
I'd go Ken Hinkley as a senior assistant and Corey Enright underneath. They've worked together before at Geelong. I think Geelong's been one of the most successful clubs.
Do you think Ken Hinkley would
time.
go to a job as a senior assistant, having been a senior coach for, what, 13 years?
I think so. I think he is fried. There's been so much speculation around Ken for so many years. I don't think he'd want to slot back into a senior coach role. One
other thing that hasn't come out yet, the payout will be in full to allow Simon to go and have a year off if that's what he wants to do, or just go and cool his jets until he comes back. And I think everyone believes that Simon will come back. My understanding is they're going to look to try and split the payout, so the soft cap. I also know that they aren't at the top of their soft cap, so they've got some money in reserve, and also next year the cap goes up. So they believe that they can alleviate the pain of somewhere, we'll call it $1 million to round it up, that will be paid to Simon Goodwin.
Are you saying they're going to pay him over 2 years?
They're going to try and do that.
There's no chance. If they've sacked him, I reckon he wants his money.
No, he'll get his money. They want to put it. They'll just want to pay it over.
I know, but
2 accounting periods for the AFL soft cap.
Right.
One other question.
He'll get his money.
Yeah. One other question too. Our man Tom Morris is the best in the business of breaking stories, but that always used to frustrate me when the story got out before players knew.
Hang on. Let's have a look at Paul Guerin, who was on our show, because I want to set this up. It's a very good question. Great minds hopefully thinking alike here, Rory. But Paul, don't forget, Paul hasn't started there yet, but this is what Paul had to say when we asked him about the ever-leaking ship at the Melbourne Football Club. The board you're joining, you know, has been in turmoil. You've had civil war between presidents, coaches, allegations, court cases, defamation cases, everything else in there. And the first thing that you walk into is somebody leaking from your board on your announcement.
Yeah, but put it in perspective, Ed. Steve Smith and Brad Green have done the right thing. They've addressed all that. It's time to put all that behind us and start to move forward.
Yeah, well, that was April 29, and today it leaked.
What do you want me to say, Ed?
No, I want you to say this. It was. You don't have to tell us who, and it's not. You did a great job. Congratulations.
I'm not arguing with that.
You should win the AFL award, mate. I've done very well.
Eddie, I'm saying every single coach sacking or coach departure gets out. Not me. Everywhere.
At Melbourne, they still leak. They haven't had a big decision. They haven't leaked, or background journalists. Since they even leaked Norm Smith getting sacked.
Well, that was long before my time.
Yeah. It is something they need to fix because good footy clubs don't leak. There's no.
I disagree. I think every footy club leaks. The Collingwood Football Club leaked. Essendon leaks. Every single football club leaks.
What was surprising was the players had a Zoom call or a Teams call at 8:30, right, to the senior players, and at 8:40 you came on air. Seems coincidental. 8:30 the players get told.
Was he saying he was on the Zoom?
Oh, no, I
wouldn't have minded being on the Zoom. Imagine that.
But that means within 5 minutes.
That's what I'm saying. It's great journalism, but there's a leak.
Well done, mate. AFL award for you. Tick, done.
And you can never find the leak either. I've tried before. You can't do it. It's impossible.
We'll get him in a headlock after the show. Yeah. Give up his sources.
That's why you go in and you get rid of all of them.
All the journos as well.
The leaks are fine. I'm just saying. You know, when Paul Guerin was on our show, we said, mate, you've got a big issue. And today, the next biggest story for the Melbourne Football Club to galvanise and do the right thing again, what do they do?
Yeah, I just push back. I think every single football club leaks.
No.
Everyone.
I reckon good footy clubs don't.
Mate, I've been around a long time.
Do you think they do or not? To varying degrees, of course.
Yeah, but on this one...
OK.
Shut up.
On this one? Because you know better than me.
No, not you.
Yeah.
No, I'm not having a go at you. Don't be so...
No, you're doing your job.
I'm saying
you're doing your job really well.
I'm saying at this time, for the Melbourne Football Club to galvanise
to keep it together.
Shut up for 1 hour so they can announce it and have the coach sit there and the president and look like a club that actually might be able to attract the coach and players and get past what has been an unmitigated disaster in the last number of years, which has seen two great people as the presidents get absolutely besmirched and smashed. Gary Pert, one of the most decorated people in football, goes out, you know, ducking and weaving. You know, others are being lined up against the wall, you know, for the next execution. And now you've got Simon Goodwin going as well.
To your point.
And the players have been all over.
If you had a stable president, a stable CEO that was there, I think Simon Goodwin would still be there as coach.
Right, just move on quickly. Yep. 30 seconds. Carlton now. Because they made this move because they wanted to get a first mover advantage against Carlton if Carlton knocks Fossey off. The other thing is, at some stage, Tassie are going to have to name one of these guys. If they want Nathan Buckley, they're going to have to actually hire him, sign him and announce him so that he doesn't end up going somewhere else.
You're right, Ed. This had a twofold benefit. One is the fact that despite the club's denials publicly, that they can get ahead of the curve and go and find the coach they want without any other club swooping on that. The second is that as soon as they make the call, they can do what's right by Simon Goodwin and tell him immediately so that he doesn't go through the next 3 weeks not knowing what's going on next year.
Okay. So do you believe Carlton will make a change end of year?
I think Michael Voss is in some trouble. I can't confirm that, but I think he's in some trouble.
No point guessing, we'll get it. And don't worry, he'll get it first.
He always does.
Okay, that's good. Because Carlton will leak too, will it?
To Tom. Only to Tom.
They leaked when they sexed Wolsey. I got that one. So that was, we're going to take a break and come back. And when we do, we're going to get these two guys, Rory Sloan and James Hird, to actually have a deep dive on the Melbourne list. They reckon they're pretty good at the top. They reckon they've got a bit of a hole in the middle, and they've got good young kids coming through. Well, let's see if that passes muster here on Footy Classified next.
25 minutes to make a name for yourself.
Welcome back to Footy Classified. The Melbourne Footy Club, after sacking Simon Goodwin, have big things to address, Rory. They need to address their list, their style of play and their culture. We look at their list demographic. They're actually the 7th oldest in the competition, and looking at their list, they should be coming into a premiership window, not in 14th position. Yeah,
absolutely. And as I've spoken from experience, there's too much changes. CEO, a coach, a president, possible other changes. They're not going to compete in finals for the next couple of years. And this is one we all want to look at, I think. The 30-plus-year-olds, 9 players, 3rd most in the comp. Some of those players aren't going to be there when they make their next finals run, so there's going to have to be some hard decisions made around players over 30.
Let's have a look at their older players and the older demographic players. You've got Max Gawn up the top of 34. He's their leader, he's their CEO, he's their captain, he's their leader. He's going to be there, probably not going to be there for next premiership, but he's their inspirational leader. Jake Melksham, I think he's had a fantastic year. I'd give him another year, even though he's at 33. Stephen May's a big one. Do they keep Stephen May? Do they not? Is there trade? Is there some currency for Stephen May with some of those other clubs?
Oh, absolutely. It's some backs, but I think he's important. You want key leaders in key positions. I think he's so important to that group down back. I want to look at Christian Petrarca and Clayton Oliver as well. I think Track, he needs to have a big year next year. I think his best role is maybe more of a forward role, maybe 60 there, 40 midfield, pinch hit where he can, but get back to being dangerous. I think he stays. What would you do with Clayton Oliver?
Well, there's been a lot of talk in the papers of whether Christian Petrarca goes. I believe Melbourne have said, you are going nowhere. You're a required player. We need you to get better. We need you to be part of our football club. And I don't believe Clayton Oliver has any trade currency. So I think they're stuck, whether they like it or not, with both of those players. And I think if the incoming coach, you need to get those guys back on side and playing back to their best form 2 or 3 years ago. And particularly Clayton Oliver, you need him to use the ball. If he's a hard-running midfield, in and under, getting the ball out, fantastic. But when he's out with space, just use the ball a bit better. And Petrarca, you're right. If he can play some forward minutes and kick some goals as well to being in the midfield, still a very damaging player. Let's have a look at younger players, the younger Dees. I mean, the younger Dees, there's some talent there. Simon Goodwin did a lot right in his last year. He tried to change the game style, didn't work for him, but what he's done is introduce some high-end talent, particularly Lindsay and Langford.
Absolutely. If you look at, I look at the Adelaide Crows list, I know that one really well. They're about 2 or 3 years ahead in this area. So he's doing all the right things. That's what the Adelaide Crows went through, but when Langford, Lindsay, Bowie's played a handful of games now, that's great. But when these guys start to get at 50 to 100 games, that's when you get the big uplift in your consistency and performances, because some of these young guys are talented.
The talent's there. Langford and Lindsay, I think, are really high and talented. They've really gone in the draft and got... You see Lindsay here, he's just a very, really special player that when he gets the ball, it ends up in a teammate's hands.
Absolutely, and they were good. And that's what you've got to expose these kids. Sometimes there's a bit of pain before you see the game from it all, but Goody did a ripping job exposing these kids early, and unfortunately he's not going to reap the rewards that another coach is going to come in and get from these young kids playing now.
And that's why he'd be disappointed, I think, to go when he's gone, because I think he's really gone into the year saying, I'm going to change the game plan, which he's tried to do, bring in those younger players. He's not going to be there to really get the fruits of his labour. The game plan, To me, this is the reason that Simon's no longer there. The criticism, the talk, the noise out there around his game plan. He won a premiership with a game plan. It was about contested footy, it was about defence, it was about contests, it was about clearance. The game has moved on. He's tried to move on. It hasn't worked for him. But these numbers, contested possession, hardball, get differentials, showing how good they are in the contest. But his ball movement just wasn't up to the standard of the best teams in the competition.
No, and those areas are still very important. To win the ball, the contest is very important. But the best teams in the comp, we'll look at Adelaide and Brisbane. They move the ball from transition better than anyone.
Look at their numbers.
They pressure heavy around the ball. They get those balloon kicks. But when they go off half-back in that defensive part of the ground, they don't allow teams like Collingwood or Hawthorn to set up. They want to go. They want to use their hands. And we'll show some clips later of how Hawthorn and Brisbane did it on the weekend against Adelaide and against the Pies. But it's about taking the game on and being brave.
The Dees had no trouble getting the ball inside their 50, one of the top teams in the competition, inside 50, but just the entries were poor, particularly high bomb kicks. Yes, you can do that now and then, but teams are too good. They set up behind the ball, they outnumber behind the ball, and these sort of kicks from Clayton Oliver, you need to use your hands and use your numbers around the contest.
Clubs, game's gone past this now too. You've got to drive your legs. We've spoken about it so much on this show where you've got to drive your legs, get the shoulders entry.
Show this edit here. We'll just pause it for a minute here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Melbourne players, a 6v3 outnumber. Right? If you don't use your hands here, you kick it in. Yes, you've got an even number, but if you win the ball back, your concentration of players here, he'll come out the other side and two is your score against. I think Simon has done a really good job, but Rory, the game plan didn't change quickly enough, and I just don't think he got enough time with those younger players.
No, and when you've got a small forward line in Fritz, Pickett, Petrarca down there, those entries become even more important to hit up these guys that want to take this ball out in front. When will they get back to finals, Hurdy?
I think they're 2 or 3 years away. I think you heard Brad Green talk about the fact that they've got a finals list. They've got a demographic that's age-wise, but I just don't think they have the young talent and the ability to move the ball. It's going to take 2 or 3 years to get them back to a top end of the finals, maybe a couple to get into the bottom end of the finals.
I heard, is it possible for Simon Goodwin, given what you just said, to change his game style at a successful rival club in the future? Because he tried and clearly didn't work at Melbourne.
I just don't think he got enough time. I don't think it did not even work. I think he still had a list that wanted to play a certain way, the contest and around the clearance. And a year is some amount of time, but he was slowly getting there. And there were some periods of the game where he got there. I definitely think Simon is an outstanding coach and he will be able to change his style to what the best teams in the competition are doing and get a list around him that he can do that. But I do know him as a coach. Contest and clearance are very important to him, as they should be.
Oh, there's going to be clean air for the Melbourne Football Club, that's for sure. New president, new CEO, possibly new football director, certainly a new coach and a new style of playing next year. What isn't new is this. I'm going to throw one to you, Tommy. You whack it on your bonce there, mate. We'll have a good look at it.
Don't
this is
hair.
No, exactly, right?
His hair will come off in that thing.
I wanted to put it when I'm really keen to see him take it off.
All good. Have it on all night.
Still there.
It's all mine.
Don't rip it off.
Melbourne's game on Sunday. It's already a ripper, but the meaning is for the Pink Ladies match, and that is for the breast cancer. And 21,000 Australians diagnosed with breast cancer every year. That'll be on the warm-up tops. We'll have all the beanies like this. You can grab your beanie at pinkladymatch.com.au. 21 years. I remember launching this on the Footy Show. And Paul Gardner, the chairman of the Melbourne Football Club, Paul was when he really came up with the idea and drove it, and it's been magnificent. It was actually one of the first things that really brought women into the football community, the Pink Lady, 21 years. So for all the dramas around Melbourne, they got this one absolutely right. It has been fantastic. So let's support all our sisters and the men who actually get breast cancer as well, but particularly the women on this big game between Melbourne and the Western Border.